Yes, good morning, my people. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's another day, it's another week. We're gonna hold a reasoning. We're gonna hold a reasoning. So let me start off by saying that this whole business of white, because even in Jamaica as a people, we struggle with this concept of white. So let me start with this. There is no such thing as white. White was something that was created to separate. The same way how in more modern times they amongst peoples we use class, we use ethnicity, we use all kinds of labels to separate peoples. But if you go off the premise that all of mankind started on the continent of Africa, there is the historical, there is the anthropological, there is the biological proofs of that statement. If there was a Garden of Eden, it was on the continent of Africa. Okay, so having said that as a basis for this reasoning, let us realize, let us go off that to say there is no white. What we have are melanated people in various degrees, and the science shows that uh, reasons for change in the levels of melanin are based on the conditions in which people have had to live. Okay, so having said that, now let's get around to the meat of the matter. There's this business of Mark Golding and his perceived whiteness. The perceived whiteness in the first instance is a fallacy, as proven by science. Now, give a little historical context on this business of Israel. And we take it from the perspective of this Bible. There is the reasoning that there are two groups of people that came out of Abraham. If we're going to go with that story, based on that story, one group of them call themselves Arabs, which is where the Palestinians fall. And you have another set of group who call themselves Israelites or Israel. So, funny thing about being able to call yourself to have Israeli citizenship is that you can only get it if your mother is considered to be an Israelite. More commonly, they use the term Jews, but not all Israelites are Jews. Because Jews is really based on your the belief system. So you may be a Jew and also what they also call a practicing Jew. Practicing just means that you're observing these rules that were laid down. So Mark Golding normally go off and talk about his father, his father, his father. But he many times doesn't make a lot of reference to his mother. because that puts him in a little conundrum. And the conundrum is this, that he would therefore have to acknowledge this Jewness or being an Israelite. And more so, he's also falling under the label of Jew. There are many photographs of him wearing that little skull cap. Uh, Yarmulke, I think is what they call it. I guess stand to be corrected on the actual pronunciation or the name itself. So he has gone down that road, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to align himself actually, as being a Jew. And amongst us African peoples or peoples of African descent, it took us many, many years, but we're finally able to piece much of the history, because the first thing they did was to remove our history and make it seem as though we only started with the Middle Passage. We weren't doing anything else before that. We were just sitting around on rocks, and we just never did anything. All right, so what we found out was that Jews, one of the first things that Jews, at least within, what we'd say, in the area of banking, we have the famous Rothschilds who started this whole banking thing. And you can dig up the history and you see the history of banking and how it came about and what Mayor Rothschild did and so on. Jews financed many of the slave ships, the so-called exploratory trips to find these persons who would then be enslaved, most of which were of African descent. They financed it. This is like saying a guy who gives money for one group to go and fight war against another group. They're just as guilty as the person who pulling the trigger. I mean, we have to really deal with these matters the way they are. In the same way, those who financed these trips are just as guilty as the ones who took people and enslaved them. Which brings us to the other part of this discussion, which is slave ownership. For the low melanated peoples, we're not saying that they all were slave owners, because they were not all slave owners. Many of them had been just formerly peasants in a British society. And many of them simply came to the new world, as they call it, looking for work, hoping to make something of themselves. But we have those who owned slaves. And, a lot of them owned slaves with the blessing of the same church that brought us the Bible. mean, can it be argued? Where did the Bible come? Where did the Bible come from? Where did it come from? Was it not from the church? Was it not the church that sent missionaries? Did it not start out with the Catholic Church and them sending priests and them blessing the weapons of warfare and expeditions? Did they not do all these things? Just call a spade, you know. I mean, it's a hard reasoning. Some people can't handle it. And I understand if you can't. But we have to have these conversations because, see, we don't know, you know, Marcus Garvey tell us, you know, if we don't know our history, you know, there are aspects of it that we are bound to repeat. So, Mark Golding is a descendant of slave owners. And like it has been said, and for those of you who are keeping up with the information, even to Lawrence Rowe out of Central Kingston come out and say, want him reparations. Who we want the reparations from? We don't want the reparations from the British government. I mean, there are those who are pursuing that idea. I think that idea is a fallacy and that it will never happen. And the one reason why I believe it will never happen is that at the end of slavery, the British government borrowed money and paid to the slave owners. It wasn't until sometime, I believe, in the 2000s that they finished paying back that money that they borrowed. So we're talking about a situation where it took them more than you borrowed this money, and it took you more than what, 150 years or so, more than 150 years to pay it back. And so they paid. So who we want it back from? We want it back from those who got paid. Plain and simple. See, they like to talk about, you know, I hear the reason about productivity and productivity and productivity. But many of the people who are talking about this productivity don't want to talk about the reasons why it is that we as a people don't care for this thing called work. Because in this work thing, playing field not level. There's X amount of work that has been extracted from our foreparents under the guise that it is okay for some people to do this to other people. And then you put a label on it and you call it, oh, white. But there's no such thing as white. But again, there are those who will disagree with me on this whole business of what is white and what isn't white. Okay? But again, I beg you, just go do a little reading, man. Do a little reading. Do a little research. And you realize that there is no such thing as white. And then we can just done this white argument. What we have is people who oppress other people. And don't get me wrong, there is black people, who oppress black people. Arabs oppress Arabs, you know, Caucasians, so-called, oppress other Caucasians. It's the way it seems like that's just how this thing set on this place called Earth. But if there are reparations to be made, we don't need to go all the way to England. We have enough people of slave masters, enough descendants of slave masters who have amassed serious wealth on the backs of oppressed black people. So then we might come to the conversation as to what you mean by oppressed. Well, when you set up a system in which I make one step forward and two steps backward, that is an oppressive system. I will never move forward. When you set up a system with all kind of rules and regulations to determine what I can do and what I can't do, and then every now and then you all decide you're going to throw us a bone, you know, go throw us a little education. Let's not forget, most of these schools were set up by some descendants and even some former slave owners. And in reality, you only throw us a bone. You know, once we get a little bit, you know, loud, you throw us a few bones, you know. Like here, the dogs outside barking, and you throw a few scraps outside and let them fight over it. Huh? And really, this is what we've been facing. So if there's reparations to be made, need to come from descendants of slave owners. And the records are there to show us who all these people are. No. Yeah, I know they're going to be all up in their feelings, and they're going to feel like they don't see why they should have to. But you see, in any situation in which black people have been the one to cause a problem, they all be like Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. They want a pound of flesh closest to the heart. That is how they operate. And the thing that terrifies them is, what if we should want the same? But as a people, there have been, with exceptions, you know, a very small percentage of us decide that, you know, small percentage decide that, yeah, they want that too from them. But the majority of us don't really want that. We just want, you know, as Peter should say, equal rights and justice. For there to be justice, there has to be what they call curing the hurt, the wrong, there must be recompense. For justice to take place, there must be recompense. It means that you gotta give up something. Not the bones and scraps that you've been throwing out. You gotta give up something. So this takes me back to Mark Golding. Mark Golding is very bright and extremely out of order to believe that he should come and be ruler over Jamaicans. There is no problem with him coming and making the money and doing whatever. We can't carry on with you. But to come and think that you're going to rule over us as Jamaicans, I think this is where he went off track. And the worst part is that he's starting to believe that it can happen. And I'm saying to my Jamaican people, not under the sun should this happen. Not under the sun should this happen. Now, we have not been able to trace back any kind of slave ownership to Michael or Norman Manley. But we have been able to trace it to Mark Golding. He's a descendant of slave owners. And on that basis, he does not have the right to rule over us as a people. And I say that unequivocally. And if it be found out later on that Michael or Norman had that kind of background, then they need to drop off for the national hero thing, brother. Yeah, man. But for the time being, we haven't found any such proof. And so, them go on, get a blind. But Mark Golding is a no-no. Then you have this thing with Israel and Palestinians. Again, if we go back into the history of these two peoples, Palestinians are of Arab descent. Both Israel and the Arabs call Abraham father. So this is a family affair, brother. We, Jamaica, CARICOM, have no business in that fight. And lest we forget, Arabs also took part in the lucrative slave trade. They didn't use ships. Slaves had to walk across the desert. And any slave who couldn't make it, his burial was in the sand. So their hands not clean when it come on to the slavery business either. So, in all fairness, those two groups have done us no favors. Because without the Jews financing many of these expeditions, If there was any slave trade, it would have been to a far lesser extent. And the Arabs, they did the same thing. You know the reason why there are so many countries on the African continent that are Muslim? Because in the Quran it says you cannot enslave your brother. And all Muslims are brothers. That's what they teach. So whole African nations, all countries in Africa, whole countries, decide say, yeah, we're Muslim too. But it was really a life and death choice. That's really what it was, a life and death choice. I've been observing the news over the past weekend, and I see where more in the past week, and there was all this war rhetoric. And now I'm hearing that why some people might have gotten hurt, and I'm watching on a Mark Golding, a page that is labeled as Mark Golding, whether it's his page or not, whether he's the owner or not, or somebody just make a page and call it that, showing PMP people picking up this Miranda Wellington for her, oh, she's a warrior. Sometimes people go down a road, people like to ask for things that they can't manage. They only hear about some things. Like in some places, they always, feel good when they hear that the people bombing one place and bombing the other place and whatever. But in their lifetime, they've never really seen anything like that. Them see a car accident, them see a truck accident, them see a couple, small things, some natural disasters. But many of them have never seen this thing called war. And so it is, I believe, that many people who jump in on this war wagon, many of them were not around or of age in the 80s, in 1980, 1979 leading into 1980, to know what political tribalism, what a bloody election looked like. Many of them don't know. They hear about these things. And I realize that here is this thing where, because the people have never seen it, they're curious. But they don't realize that this thing is like a Pandora box. Like a genie in a bottle. When you let that out, that don't go back in until it is done, And what done look like could be very traumatizing if you're not unfortunate enough to be a victim of it. So for the people talking about war, my words to them would be, leave that alone. That's bigger than you. This war argument is bigger than you. You don't know what you're asking for. The second thing about this war argument is all well and good for you to bring a war argument, you know. But what when the other guy decides he want to defend himself? I hope you feel the same way about it. Because many times people bring war in and then believe say, you know, the guy who then bring the war to go just, surrender. But that guy might have a different idea to say, yeah, well, if a war you want, a war you'll get. But you see, here the thing. But never bring no war to these people. But them dip on stage and I talk about if a war is war. But who did bring war to them? Tell me who did bring war to them. It's the same way I listening to another YouTuber talking about, oh, we the JLP don't want to see the PMP do it, and the PMP don't want to see the JLP do it. And I ask one question. Show me where JLP sabotage PMP while PMP was doing an excellent job. Because if memory serves me right, the PMP came to power in 1972. And there were certain downturns in the economy that had nothing to do with the JLP. There was the bauxite levy losing its value because aluminum prices fell off considerably. And there was OPEC deciding to increase the price of oil on the rest of the world. That was not of JLP's doing. But the 1976 state of emergency and the arresting of persons affiliated with JLP was what the PNP did. This is not rewriting no history. This is telling it like it is. It was the PNP, through their leader Michael Manley, that declared this pathway down democratic socialism, and the declaration of following Fidel Castro to the mountaintop. Well, let me ask you this. What has been the result for Cuba? What has been the result? You see the people in Cuba eating the medicine and the nursing and the engineering. You see them eating that? Most educated workforce. Do you see them eating that? Don't talk foolishness. When children hungry, them not care about no education. When a man hungry, or have children that are hungry, him don't care about no education. All him wants is food. So don't come to me no foolishness. So again, I say, show me when the JLP was working against good policy of the PNP. We and them are not the same. We and them are not the same. And I've been listening to some of these reasons, and I am here. I have said it before. Are we in a situation where the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Because I hear people advocating to say, if you have a good, solid PMP comrade, go out and vote for them. But let us not forget how this business works. It is first past the post. It is who gets the most seats. So in one breath, you can't be saying that you want Mark Golding out, but you're encouraging people to go and vote for PMP candidates. Tell me how that will work. It would be a miracle if Mark Golding were to lose his seat, because his seat is a garrison. They vote according to how they're told to vote. So if he wins his seat and enough so-called good comrades who are not risers win their seat, who will be the government? The PMP. And who will be head of that government? Mark Golding. Are we then not back where we started? Or is it because of this love for Norman Manley Party? And while y'all busy working out the problems in Norman Manley Party, the rest of Jamaica suck salt through a metal spoon. Let us not be stupid people. The head of the snake can only go if you take out the tentacles that give him the strength. And the tentacles are all those people who are running to provide him with a number of seats so that he can become prime minister. Let us not be silly. Let us get our messaging straight, man. Because some of you seem like, it's a betwixt and between thing. We're not really sure which side we're on. We don't want no former slave owner child to be leader of us. Enough of that done with. But somehow come out and say, why are you so angry about this? Well, if you don't feel angry about it, you don't really know what you depend. Because a guy make a big talk about him done making money already and not come for scrape. But all them actions to me seem like that of a scraper. All them actions seem like that of a scraper. Not even star upon us, I mean. Imagine the stairway brought down in partner one of the building them in a constituency. And you think he would have called up two man and say, I could fix that thing proper and go through and check if any more stairwell need for fix. What has the man done? Besides, he make a whole heap of talk. But are you seeing any evidence of the people in his constituency living any better? And then this is the man who you want to run the whole country? With who? Because they have a problem when Siaga was, when they used to call him, one-man band. This brother can't even beat a drum. want to stop play around with this business here. Because I think someone is still take this thing for a joke. Stop play around with this thing. If you play with fire, you know, you get burned. If you play with fire, you get burned. Don't play with fire. Pack up this brother and send him packing back to wherever it is that him claim him come from. Pack him up and send him back. And what you gonna do? You gonna build a PMP, you gonna go build a party. Eh? Go build a party with some real values. Okay? And stop this foolishness that not keeping up. Labor rights, I'm gonna try and make sure you find yourself to the polls. I'm gonna try keep it down and don't engage them people so that we have no war thing broke out. Let us beat them at the polls. Let's go out and give them a boss ass, a proper boss ass. For the sake of democracy, which democracy is really a fallacy, but for the sake of democracy and the principle of it, we'll give them 7 seats. 7 seats. And we take care of this republic thing and be done with all the foolishness. And yeah, based on what I say I go on, yeah, we need to deal with the thing. These are my thoughts on this 7th day of July.